Hi, welcome to our daily encounter. Here's the scenario. Let's say you're having financial difficulties. And early in the morning, you get up and you pray to the Lord, Lord, help me with my finances. Help me get out of this hole that I'm in. Help me to be able to pay my bills. And just a few hours after making that prayer, guess what? The dishwasher breaks. The car gets a flat tire. Everything begins to fall apart, and everything seems to be going in the opposite direction of the answered prayer that you're seeking. And maybe to make matters worse, maybe you pray the prayer and something happens that that promises your way out. Maybe someone comes in and promises you a certain amount of money, or there's a job offer that you receive that you think, wow, this is the way that the Lord is going to answer my prayers and He's going to fix all of my problems. Only to find out that that person doesn't go through, that you don't end up getting the job that was offered to you. And before you know it, you're not only back where you were before, but you're worse off than you were before. Now, I think probably any of us who have been walking with the Lord long enough have experienced something like that. It may not be finances. It may be something else that you were praying for, and it just seemed like from that point on, from that prayer onward, everything was working in the opposite direction. Now, this happens a lot of times in our spiritual lives and in our experience. And these can be very trying times for our faith. Because we begin to wonder, we might begin to question, does God even care about what I'm going through? Or does God even listen to my prayers? Can God even answer my prayers? Might be something we might say in an extreme case. But in either case, it can be very, very damaging to our faith when these situations arise. And that's why I'm so thankful that we have in our reading today a story where people met a similar situation. The Israelites, if you remember, are in Egyptian bondage, and they are being oppressed very, very harshly. The Egyptians have gone far enough, so far, that they're even killing their children. It's a very, very bad situation, and the Israelites have been praying and praying and praying, perhaps for hundreds of years, Lord, deliver us from this bondage. Well, these two guys come from the wilderness, and they come out and they begin saying, hey, God has spoken to me, or Aaron saying that God has spoken to Moses, and that he is going to deliver you from the Egyptian bondage. And not only do they have that message, but they also have these signs and wonders to back up what they're saying. And you say, wow, wait a minute, this is beginning to look hopeful. These guys, one, seem to know what they're talking about, and two, they seem to have the power of God to back up what they're saying. And in this situation, these people get very, very excited, all the way to the point that they bow down and they worship the Lord because they are just so sure that God has brought about their deliverance. Well, it doesn't take long for that excitement to die down, because as soon as Pharaoh hears that these guys want to go into the wilderness for a time and go worship their God and offer up sacrifices, Pharaoh just makes things worse on them. Not only do they have to meet their quota of making bricks, but they also have to gather their own straw and still maintain that quota. And so the Israelites are being even more heavily oppressed, and the people in charge of them, the Israelites who are over them, are getting beaten, and they're crying out to Pharaoh, and they get angry against Moses and Aaron, saying, hey, you guys promised us deliverance, and look what happened. Things have just gotten worse. Basically, we would have been better off if you guys never would have showed up. And by the way, this becomes an attitude of the Israelites even throughout, after they're delivered, even through the wilderness. Every time they come across a difficulty, it seems like they always say, well, we had it better in Egypt. We would have been better if you just left us alone, Moses. Well, we already see that attitude creeping up here. But perhaps maybe we can understand, because here they thought deliverance were coming, their prayers were going to be answered, and things just got worse. And so, how do we deal with these types of situations? You know, we can think about it in a more objective way when we read it, when we read a story of somebody else who's going through it. And I think that's what's so helpful in having the scriptures and having these stories where people are going through similar situations, because we can look at these things in an objective way. When it's happening to us, it's not so easy to look at things objectively. But when we can see the stories, it's much more easier to do that. And as we look at their story, we can probably come up with at least 2 reasons why God would have allowed it to happen in this fashion. Because if you think about it, God could have just come in and delivered them, and out they go, and the first time through, they just get out of there. But God could have had another reason and purpose. One might have been to test their faith. To see, you know, okay, you guys are bowing down and worshiping me. You believe in the message when everything looks good, when everything looks positive. Will you continue to believe the message when everything looks bleak, and everything looks bad? That's where faith is really tested. It's in those times in which you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, when you don't see hope in the circumstances. That's when faith is really tested, and that's when it either fizzles out or when it shines the brightest. And so it could be a testing of their faith. The second way we could look at it is this was just a part of the process. This was something that God needed to happen in order to come up with the end result. And so this could have just been part of God's process of deliverance. And they were just struggling with the process God had planned for them. And I would suggest today in this devotion that maybe the reason why these things happen to us is for one of those 2 reasons. It could be that, going back to that financial situation, that God is testing you, saying, okay, I'm gonna turn up the heat a little bit. I'm gonna make it a little bit difficult. You show good faith in praying to me, praying in trust and reliance upon me, but I'm gonna test it a little bit and see just how much you really do trust me, how much you really do depend upon me, and how much you rely upon yourself or on your circumstances. And so he'll mix things up in our circumstances to break us free from depending upon those things. Or secondly, it could be because it's part of the process. Maybe God needs to get us in a certain place, in a certain situation, so that he can answer our prayers. And getting us to that place might cause more difficult, or might be more difficult, a more difficult path. You know, we always use the phrase, things has got to get worse before they get better. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes things do have to get worse before we can come out in a better place. So that's just those are just 2 of perhaps many reasons why God might deal with us in this particular way whenever we pray. But the main thing we walk away with is that God has a plan, he has a purpose, and he has a wisdom far beyond anything that we can even imagine. And so we just have to keep plugging along, day by day, week by week, month by month, just trusting in the Lord, knowing that his ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and that he has it all figured out. We are just trying to figure it out as we go along, but he's already got the end result figured out. He already knows how to bring us there. We just have to go along with the ride and trust that he will bring us there. And so let's just think about those things today. I do thank you guys for watching the video. Hopefully it's been helpful to you to kind of put things in perspective. I hope you guys have a great day today. I love you guys. God bless.